The Prisoner and the Execution Order. The prison was cold and dark. Thick metal walls surrounded the small, square cell where a young alien girl sat in chains. Her silver eyes stared at the floor, her breathing slow but steady. Her name was Lyra, and today was the day she was going to die. Outside, the guards moved quickly, preparing for the execution. The air was filled with the hum of energy weapons and the heavy footsteps of armored soldiers. The execution order had been signed by the supreme commander of the Tselran Empire. Lyra was accused of treason, helping the humans, the greatest enemies of her kind. She knew she was innocent, but in the eyes of the Empire, her fate was already decided. The sound of a buzzer broke the silence. The door to her cell slid open, and two tall alien guards stepped in. Their dark armor glowed with blue energy lines, and their faces were hidden behind helmets. One of them pointed a weapon at her. "It is time," he said in a cold, robotic voice. Lyra didn't struggle as they unlocked her chains and pulled her up. Her wrists were bruised from the tight metal cuffs, but she showed no pain. She walked silently between the two guards as they led her through the long, dimly lit hallway. At the end of the corridor, a massive steel door slid open, revealing the execution chamber. A large crowd had gathered outside, watching through the thick glass. High-ranking officials and soldiers stood in a line, their faces emotionless. The execution platform was in the center of the room, bathed in a harsh white light. The lead executioner stood next to a tall energy blade, its blue glow reflecting in his black eyes. He turned to the crowd and spoke in a loud, firm voice. "Lyra of the Tselran race, you have been found guilty of treason. Your punishment is death." A murmur ran through the audience, but no one spoke against it. The war between the Tselran Empire and the humans had lasted for years. Anyone who supported the enemy was considered a threat. The guards pushed Lyra onto the platform, forcing her to kneel. The executioner raised his energy blade. She closed her eyes. Then, boom! A loud explosion shook the room. The glass wall behind the execution platform cracked as smoke and sparks filled the air. People screamed and ran in different directions. The guards turned, raising their weapons, searching for the source of the attack. Amidst the chaos, a deep, commanding voice echoed through the chamber. "She's innocent." Lyra's eyes shot open. A man was being dragged into the chamber by two more guards. He was tall, with short, dark hair and a rugged face covered in bruises. His military uniform was torn, revealing deep wounds on his arms. He was human. Gasps spread through the crowd. A human prisoner in the heart of the Tselran Empire. This was impossible. The Supreme Commander himself stepped forward, his sharp red eyes narrowing. "Commander Jace Carter," he said slowly, recognizing the human prisoner. "You dare speak." Jace's lips curled into a weak smile. "She's not a traitor," he said. "She's just a girl caught in your war." The Supreme Commander let out a cold laugh. "And why would a human care about one of our kind?" Jace's eyes darkened. "Because I saw what she did." He turned to Lyra. "She saved lives. Tselran lives. She risked everything to stop an attack that would have killed innocent people. And this is how you reward her." Lyra felt her heart pound. How did this human know? He was telling the truth. She had secretly stopped an attack from her own people. But no one should have known that. The executioner raised his blade again. "It doesn't matter. She has been judged." Jace struggled against his captors. "You're making a mistake." The executioner swung the blade down. A gunshot rang out. The executioner collapsed to the ground, a smoking hole in his chest. The chamber erupted into chaos. More shots were fired as armed soldiers rushed into the room. Lyra didn't hesitate. She rolled away from the platform, dodging laser blasts as panic spread. Jace broke free, punching one of the guards and grabbing a fallen weapon. "Move," he shouted at Lyra. She hesitated. Trusting a human was dangerous. But at this moment, he was the only chance she had. She ran toward him. The Supreme Commander's furious voice echoed over the alarms. "Stop them! Kill them both!" More guards poured in. Lyra grabbed a weapon from the ground and fired at the control panel, making the lights flicker. The doors started locking and unlocking in confusion. Jace grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the exit. "We need a ship." Lyra's mind raced. There was only one way out, the hangar, but it was heavily guarded. "Follow me," she shouted, leading the way. The two of them disappeared into the smoke-filled corridors, with an entire army chasing after them. The hunt had begun. A desperate escape. The sirens screamed through the dark corridors, a warning to every soldier in the facility. Two fugitives were on the run. Red lights flashed against the metallic walls, casting eerie shadows as armed guards stormed in from every direction. Lyra sprinted through the narrow passage, her heart pounding like a war drum. Behind her, Jace Carter ran close, his injured arm pressing against his ribs as he held onto a stolen energy rifle. His breaths were heavy, but his eyes burned with determination. "We're trapped," Jace growled, glancing at the rows of locked doors ahead. Lyra didn't stop. She skidded to a halt beside a control panel and slammed her palm against it. The screen flickered, flashing HCC SSD and ID. Come on," she muttered, fingers flying across the interface. Jace turned and fired down the hallway. Blue plasma shots whizzed past him, missing their marks by inches. The guards were closing in, their footsteps echoing like a marching army. "Lyra, we don't have time." The panel beeped. A door hissed open. "This way," she shouted, grabbing Jace's arm and pulling him through. The moment they crossed the threshold, she slammed her hand on the control panel inside, sealing the door behind them. Boom! A blast shook the walls as the soldiers fired at the metal door, but for now, it held. Jace exhaled sharply, leaning against the cold surface. "I hope you have a plan, because I don't think they're just going to let us walk out of here." Lyra wiped the sweat from her brow, her mind racing. "The hangar," she said finally. "There's a ship there. If we can get to it, we can escape." Jace chuckled bitterly. "Right. Just two fugitives against an entire empire's army. No big deal." She shot him a glare. "You saved me. I didn't ask for it. But if we want to live, we have to work together." Jace studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, alien girl. Lead the way. The hunt begins." They moved fast, weaving through dark maintenance tunnels beneath the facility. Above them, the sounds of soldiers barking orders filled the air. "Block all exits. Find the human and the traitor." Lyra clenched her fists. Traitor. That word burned inside her. She had spent her whole life serving the Sauron Empire, believing in its power. Now, they wanted her dead. Jace nudged her. "You all right?" She shook off the thought and focused. "We need to climb up. There's a ventilation shaft that leads straight to the hangar." Jace sighed. Why is it always ventilation shafts? She ignored him and jumped onto a metal pipe, pulling herself up toward the open duct above. Jace followed, grunting as his wounded arm struggled with the climb. "Faster," she whispered. Below them, the sound of marching boots grew louder. The soldiers were getting closer. Jace barely made it inside before the doors below burst open. The two fugitives held their breath as soldiers swarmed the room beneath them. A cold voice echoed from below. "Find them. Now." Lyra recognized the voice immediately. Commander Xiron, the Supreme Commander's right hand. A ruthless enforcer, known for never failing a mission. Jace tensed beside her. "I don't like that guy's voice." "Move," she whispered. Crawling through the tight duct, they made their way forward. The metal creaked beneath them, and Lyra's breath caught in her throat. If they made too much noise. A sudden clang. Jace cursed under his breath. His boot had knocked against the metal. Silence. Then, above us, Xiron barked. The barrel of a plasma rifle pointed up, and Lyra's instincts screamed. Go. She kicked open the other side of the shaft and dropped down into a new hallway. Jace followed right after. Behind them, plasma shots burned through the ducts. The chase was on again. The final stretch. The hangar was close. Lyra could feel the hum of ships in the distance, the scent of burning fuel filling the air. Just ahead, she said. Jace glanced back. And right behind us. Dozens of soldiers were now flooding the corridors, their weapons glowing. Lyra gritted her teeth. No time for hesitation. She threw herself at the final security door, slamming her hand onto the scanner. The panel blinked. Access denied. No, she gasped. No, no, no. Jace spun around, rifle raised. Lyra. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Commander Xiron. His piercing red eyes locked onto her. His long black cloak barely moved as he raised his blade, a crimson energy sword that hummed with deadly power. There is nowhere left to run, he said smoothly. The Empire does not forgive traitors. Jace fired first. Xiron moved like a phantom. He twisted, dodging the plasma bolt with unnatural speed. In one swift motion, he leaped forward, his blade slashing down. Jace barely blocked with his rifle, but the impact sent him crashing into the wall. Lyra's mind raced. There had to be a way. She looked up. The emergency override. Without thinking, she jumped, grabbing onto a loose wire hanging from the ceiling. She swung herself toward the emergency panel and smashed her fist into it. The hangar doors burst open. Alarms blared. The sound of rushing air filled the room as the security locks failed. Jace groaned, pushing himself up. Tell me that was you. Lyra grabbed his hand. Run. They sprinted into the massive hangar. Rows of sleek, black ships stood in neat lines. The ground crew shouted in confusion as explosions rocked the facility. Xiron stepped forward, his voice calm. Seal the hangar. Doors started closing. Lyra and Jace ran faster. They spotted a small stealth ship at the far end. Jace grinned. That one. Lyra didn't argue. They reached the ship just as the first guard stormed in. Plasma shots rained down around them. Jace fired back while Lyra slammed her hand on the controls, forcing the hatch open. They stumbled inside. Jace collapsed into the co-pilot's seat. Fly. Fly now. Lyra's hands flew over the controls. Engines roared to life. The ship lifted off the ground, hovering. Xiron stepped forward, raising his blade. His eyes locked onto Lyra's. We will find you, he said, no matter where you run. Lyra met his gaze. Let's see you try. She slammed the throttle forward. The ship shot out of the hangar, piercing through the stormy skies, disappearing into the stars. The forbidden planet. The stolen stealth ship shot through the darkness of space like a ghost, its engines humming low to avoid detection. Lyra gripped the controls tightly, her fingers trembling as she navigated the vast emptiness. Behind her, Jace groaned, pressing a bloodied hand against his ribs. That was insane, he muttered. Remind me to never escape from a high-security alien prison with you again. Lyra didn't respond. Her mind was racing. They had escaped, but they were far from safe. The Tselran Empire was relentless. They wouldn't stop hunting them. Jace sat up in the co-pilot's seat, wincing. All right, what's the plan? Because I'm guessing we can't just land on some friendly planet and hide. Lyra's silver eyes flickered to the scanner. A red alert pulsed on the screen. Pursuers. They're already tracking us, she said, voice tight. Their fleet will be here in minutes. Jace cursed. You've got to be kidding me. We need to disappear, Lyra said. Completely. Jace frowned. How? Lyra hesitated. There was only one option. One dangerous, impossible option. She turned the ship toward a dark, swirling mass in the distance. A planet. No, not just any planet. A dead planet. A place that Tselran Empire had abandoned long ago. Revok 9. Jace followed her gaze and immediately shook his head. Nope. No way. That place is cursed. Lyra shot him a look. Do you believe in curses, human? I believe in not being eaten alive by whatever nightmare creatures live down there. Lyra ignored him and pushed the throttle forward. The ship lurched toward the planet, the gravity pulling them in. Behind them, the Celeran fleet appeared, massive, deadly warships, their red lights blinking like hungry eyes. Jace gritted his teeth. All right, better a death planet than execution. Let's do it. Crash landing. The moment they hit the atmosphere, the ship started shaking violently. Thick clouds swirled like black smoke, electricity crackling through the sky. The wind howled, battering the ship like a beast trying to tear them apart. Lyra fought the controls, trying to stabilize their descent. Hold on. Jace grabbed the sides of his seat. I already hate this plan. A flash of lightning struck the ship. Sparks exploded from the dashboard. The engines failed. The ship spiraled downward. The last thing Lyra saw before impact was a dark, endless forest stretching beneath them. Then, crash. Darkness, the awakening, pain. That was the first thing Lyra felt when she woke up. A sharp, burning pain in her shoulder. She groaned, forcing her eyes open. The ship was wrecked, half buried in the dirt, smoke rising from the shattered hull. Jace was slumped beside her, blood trailing down his forehead. She shook him. Jace, wake up. He didn't move. Her heart pounded. She checked his pulse. Weak, but there. He was alive. Lyra stumbled out of the wreckage, gripping her injured shoulder. The air was thick with mist, the sky hidden behind swirling clouds. The trees around them were massive, their twisted branches reaching out like claws. The ground was damp, covered in strange glowing moss. A deep growl rumbled in the distance. Lyra's blood ran cold. We're not alone. She turned back, grabbed Jace's arm, and dragged him out of the wreckage. He groaned, blinking awake. What happened? He muttered. Crash. We need to move. Jace forced himself up, looking around. His eyes widened. Yeah. No arguments here. The growling grew louder. Lyra turned slowly. Between the trees, glowing red eyes appeared. Massive creatures, their reptilian bodies covered in black spiked armor, slithered out of the darkness. Their long, razor-sharp teeth gleamed under the dim light. Jace stared. Tell me those are friendly. Lyra grabbed his arm. Run. The chase. They ran. The creatures roared, crashing through the jungle behind them, their heavy bodies shaking the ground. Lyra dodged through the trees, leaping over twisted roots. Jace struggled to keep up, still weak from his injuries. One of the beasts lunged. Jace turned and fired his plasma pistol. The shot hit its thick hide, but barely slowed it down. We can't outrun them, Jace shouted. Lyra spotted a massive rock formation ahead. There, we can climb. They reached the rock wall just as the creatures lunged again. Lyra jumped first, grabbing onto the rough surface and scrambling upward. Jace followed, groaning in pain with every move. The creatures snapped at their heels, claws digging into the stone. Lyra pulled herself over the top and reached for Jace. Come on. One of the creatures leaped. Lyra yanked Jace up just in time. The beast slammed against the rock, its claws scraping against the surface. The creatures growled in frustration, but couldn't climb. Panting, Jace collapsed onto his back. I really, really hate this planet. Lyra didn't argue. A new threat. The night fell quickly, wrapping the jungle in darkness. The creatures eventually slithered away, disappearing into the mist. Jace and Lyra sat in silence, catching their breath. Then, a rustling sound. Lyra tensed, gripping her plasma knife. Jace raised his pistol. From the shadows, figures emerged. Not creatures. People. They looked half Celeran, half human. Their features were strange. Alien eyes, human-like skin, tribal armor. They held weapons, their faces unreadable. One of them stepped forward, a woman with deep blue markings on her face. She studied Lyra closely. "You are not supposed to be here," the woman said. Jace frowned. "Yeah, trust me, we didn't exactly plan this vacation." The woman ignored him. Her gaze stayed locked on Lyra. "You," she said slowly. "I know what you are." Lyra's heart pounded. "And what is that?" The woman's eyes darkened. "The key." Jace looked between them. "Okay, anyone want to explain what that means?" The woman turned to the others. "Take them." Before Lyra or Jace could react, the tradespeople raised their weapons. A sharp pain shot through Lyra's neck. Darts. Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw before everything went dark was Jace collapsing beside her. Then, nothing. The forbidden planet. A desperate descent. The ship was dying. Lyra fought the controls with every ounce of strength she had left. Sparks flew from the dashboard, warning lights flashed, and a deep metallic groan echoed through the cabin. The stealth ship had served them well, but it wasn't designed to survive this kind of atmospheric entry. Jace, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, wiped blood from his forehead. "So let me get this straight. Your grand escape plan was to crash us into an uncharted death planet." Lyra gritted her teeth. "Would you rather be back in that execution chamber?" Jace considered it for half a second. "I'd rather not be dead, if that's what you're asking." The ship rocked violently as it hit turbulence. The planet below loomed like a nightmare. Dense forests stretching endlessly, covered in thick blue mist. Jagged mountains tore through the land like skeletal remains of some ancient beast. Storm clouds swirled above, spitting bolts of green lightning. And the scanners were screaming warnings. Unstable atmosphere detected. High probability of hostile life forms. No known settlements. Jace groaned. "Yeah, this just keeps getting better." Lyra ignored him, focusing on what little control she still had. The ship's nose tilted dangerously downward, pulled by the planet's gravity. "We're coming in too fast," she muttered, flicking through the manual override. "Brace for impact." Jace gripped his seat. "I really hate this plan." The ship broke through the clouds. And then everything collapsed. The ground rushed up to meet them. The last thing Lyra saw before impact was a sea of massive, gnarled trees stretching out in every direction. Then, crash. The aftermath. Pain. That was the first thing Lyra felt when she woke up. A sharp, burning pain in her side. Her body felt heavy, like it had been crushed under a mountain. Smoke filled the cockpit. The ship was a wreck, half buried in the dirt, metal twisted beyond repair. One wing was missing entirely. The front hull had crumpled, but the emergency systems had deployed a protective energy shield at the last second, likely the only reason they had survived. Survived. Lyra's heart skipped. Jace. She turned her head, wincing as pain shot through her ribs. Jace was slumped in his seat, unconscious. Blood trailed from a wound on his forehead. Panic surged in her chest. She unbuckled her restraints and stumbled toward him, shaking his shoulder. "Jace, wake up." No response. Her fingers pressed against his neck. His pulse was there, weak, but steady. She exhaled, relief flooding through her. Outside, the world was eerily silent. But Lyra knew better than to trust that silence. They had crashed in unknown territory, and something was watching them. The first signs of life. Lyra pried the emergency kit from the wall, pulling out a scanner. The device whirred to life, flashing data across the screen. Atmosphere. Breathable. Temperature. 32 degrees Celsius. Life forms detected. Multiple. Proximity. Close. Lyra's grip tightened. Her eyes flickered toward the thick jungle outside. The trees were massive, twisted things with dark, jagged bark, their roots weaving together like a web. Strange blue fungi pulsed with bioluminescent light. The air smelled metallic, charged with electricity. Then she heard it, a low guttural growl. A shadow moved between the trees. Lyra's stomach turned to ice. They were not alone. She grabbed the emergency blaster and turned back to Jace, shaking him harder. "Jace, wake up. We need to move." Jace groaned, his eyes fluttering open. 5 more minutes. Get up, or you won't have 5 more seconds, she snapped. Jace blinked groggily. Then he saw the blaster in her hand, and the look in her eyes. That woke him up real fast. The hunters in the dark. Jace stumbled out of the wreckage, still dazed. "Where the hell are we?" Lyra didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the jungle. "We need to move. Now." Jace looked at her, then at the shadows moving between the trees. He saw them too, now, glowing red eyes watching from the darkness. His hand went to his own blaster. "Oh, that's not good." A deep, clicking sound echoed through the trees. Then, a roar. A monstrous shape burst from the foliage. It was fast. Too fast. Lyra fired, the plasma bolt cutting through the air. The creature dodged. Jace barely had time to react before it lunged. It was massive, reptilian, covered in dark, bone-plated armor. Clawed hands slammed into the dirt where Jace had stood a second ago, barely missing him. He rolled away, firing blindly. "What the hell is T8? Lyra didn't answer. She was too busy running. More of them emerged from the trees, their bodies shifting in and out of the mist like phantoms. They were hunting, and Lyra and Jace were the prey. The escape. They ran. Lyra's breath burned in her lungs as she leaped over tangled roots, dodging low-hanging vines. Jace kept pace, cursing under his breath. The creatures didn't slow. One of them leaped from the trees, aiming for Lyra's back. Jace spun and fired. The plasma shot hit the beast square in the chest. It screeched, its armored body sizzling from the impact. But it didn't die. It kept coming. Jace's face went pale. That was supposed to kill it. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Keep moving." Then, through the thick mist, she saw it. A massive stone archway, half buried in vines, standing in the middle of the jungle. The entrance to something old. Something not natural. The ground trembled. The creatures suddenly stopped. They snarled but didn't cross the archway. Lyra and Jace ran straight through. The second they crossed the threshold, the creatures vanished. Not ran away. Not turned back. They disappeared. Lyra's breath came in sharp gasps. What was that? Jace, bent over, hands on his knees, looked up at the massive ruins before them. He swallowed hard. "I think we just found something we weren't supposed to." Secrets of the past. The lost ruins. Silence. Lyra and Jace stood at the entrance of the ancient structure, their breath still ragged from the chase. The jungle around them seemed frozen in time. The massive reptilian creatures that had been hunting them had vanished the moment they crossed the stone archway. It was as if some invisible force had stopped them. Jace wiped sweat and dirt from his face. "Okay. Can someone please explain why the giant death lizards were terrified of some old rocks?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. Her silver eyes scanned the towering ruins before them. The structure looked ancient, massive stone pillars covered in intricate carvings, vines creeping through the cracks. The air inside the ruins felt different, charged with something unnatural. "This place isn't just old," she murmured. "It's forbidden." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Forbidden?" Lyra stepped forward cautiously. The Tselran Empire never allowed exploration of certain worlds. They erased them from star maps, claimed they were uninhabitable or dangerous, but I always suspected there was more to it. Jace frowned, glancing back at the jungle. "So, let me get this straight. We crash-landed on a planet that doesn't exist, got chased by unkillable monsters, and now we're standing in a place that even they're afraid of." Lyra nodded. Jace sighed. "Great. Love this for us." Echoes from the past. The moment they stepped inside the ruins, a strange humming filled the air. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive. The stone walls pulsed with faint blue energy, glowing softly as they walked deeper. The carvings along the walls depicted scenes, beings with elongated heads and glowing eyes standing beside humans, giant ships hovering over planets, a war, flames, destruction, entire civilizations wiped out. Lyra's heart pounded. This isn't just a ruin, she whispered. It's a record. Jace ran a hand over the carvings. What kind of record? Lyra studied the images carefully. Then she froze. At the center of the wall was a massive engraving of a girl. She looked almost Celerin, but different. Her eyes glowed brighter. Her skin had a strange bioluminescent pattern. And surrounding her were two opposing forces, one side showing the Celerin Empire's symbol, the other side showing human warships. Jace stepped beside her. That's... He hesitated, staring at the engraving. Lyra, that looks like you. Her fingers traced the image, her mind spinning. No, she whispered. It can't be. The truth revealed. Before Jace could respond, the humming in the air grew louder. Suddenly, the ground beneath them vanished. They fell. The world blurred into darkness. And then, light. Lyra gasped as she landed on her back, staring up at a massive chamber. The walls shimmered like liquid metal, strange symbols glowing across the surfaces. A deep, resonating voice filled the air, not from a person, but from the very room itself. Welcome, Lyra. Her blood turned to ice. Jace scrambled to his feet. Okay, I know I didn't say that. Lyra's heart pounded. Who's there? The walls shifted, forming images. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room. An ancient figure appeared, tall, regal, with eyes that burned like stars. A Celerin, but not like the ones Lyra had ever seen before. You were never meant to find this place, the figure said, but fate has brought you here. Lyra swallowed hard. Who are you? I am what remains of the first ones, the true architects of the Celerin Empire. Jace took a step back. Yeah, that sounds ominous. Lyra's pulse raced. Why do you know my name? The figure's glowing eyes locked onto hers. Because you are the key, the last hope to fix what we destroyed. Jace raised a hand. Sorry, I think we missed a few chapters. What does that mean? The projection flickered, revealing more scenes. Images of a laboratory, a child in a containment pod, glowing energy surging through her veins. A hybrid. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. No, she whispered. The truth will set them free. The calm after the storm. The ruins were gone. What had once been an ancient monument of lost knowledge, buried beneath centuries of dust, was now nothing more than rubble and shattered stone. The ground still hummed with residual energy, remnants of the battle that had just taken place. The sky above, once thick with storm clouds, was beginning to clear, revealing the endless expanse of the universe beyond. And in the center of it all, Lyra stood victorious. Her breath came in sharp gasps, her body still trembling from the raw power she had unleashed. She could still feel the echo of it inside her, the surge of energy that had torn through her veins like wildfire, burning away the limits she once believed she had. Xiron was gone, and with him, the last remnant of the Empire's dark secret had been erased from this world. Jace groaned from where he sat against a fallen pillar, holding his ribs. So, we won. Lyra exhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm still raging inside her. I don't know, she admitted, but something tells me this was only the beginning. Jace glanced up at the sky, where the Celerin fleet had once hovered. The ships were gone, retreated or destroyed. He couldn't be sure. But there was one thing he was sure about. Lyra had changed. Before, she had been strong, fast, and dangerous. But now she was something else entirely. Something more. and that terrified him almost as much as it reassured him. The Empire's next move. Far above the planet, beyond the reach of the crumbling ruins, a lone Selran warship hovered in orbit. Inside its command center, Supreme Commander Valkor watched the battle unfold from a massive holographic display. He had seen everything. The destruction of the ruins, the fall of Tyron, the impossible power that had awakened inside Lyra. He gripped the edge of his throne, his claws digging into the metal. His red eyes burned with fury. A figure stepped forward, a high-ranking general, his expression tense. Orders, Supreme Commander. Valkor's gaze remained fixed on the screen, on the glowing image of Lyra standing amidst the wreckage. "We were wrong," he said quietly. The general hesitated. "Sir." Valkor leaned forward. "We thought we could erase her, hide her existence from the galaxy, but we failed." The general shifted uncomfortably. "Then, should we mobilize the fleets? Bring the full weight of the Empire upon her?" A slow smile crept across the Supreme Commander's lips. "No," he said. "That would be wasteful." The general frowned. "Then what?" Valkor's voice was cold. "Let her run. Let her believe she is free. And when the time is right, we will remind her who she truly belongs to. A galaxy on the brink." Back on the surface, Lyra and Jace had begun moving again. They had no time to waste. The Empire would never stop hunting them, and every second they stayed here was a second closer to their inevitable next battle. Jace winced as he limped beside her. "All right. So what's the plan, O mighty super being?" Lyra frowned. "We need to find the resistance." Jace raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll believe us? We just fought off the Empire's top executioner, and you turned into some kind of space goddess. That's a lot to process." Lyra didn't flinch. "They don't have to believe me. They just have to listen." Jace sighed. "And what if they don't?" Lyra's eyes glowed faintly, still pulsing with the power inside her. "Then I'll make them." The journey to the resistance. After hours of trekking through the dense jungle, they finally found what they were looking for. A hidden resistance outpost, nestled deep within the ruins of an abandoned Selran city. The air was thick with tension as guards surrounded them, weapons drawn. "State your business," a masked rebel demanded. Jace raised his hands. "Okay, before anyone shoots us, let me just say, this is way above my pay grade." Lyra stepped forward. "We're here to speak with your leader." The rebels hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. Finally, one of them muttered something into a communicator. Moments later, a new voice rang through the air. "Let them through." The guards parted, and Lyra and Jace were led deeper into the outpost. What they found inside shocked them. Hundreds of rebels, humans, Selrans, and even hybrid species, all working together. The resistance was stronger than they had expected. And at the center of it all, standing before a massive holographic war map, was a woman Lyra never thought she would see again. A woman she had thought was dead. Her heart nearly stopped. Mother. The truth unfolds. The woman turned, her face shadowed by the dim lights of the outpost. Her features were unmistakable. Lyra's mother, the woman who had been executed by the Empire years ago. Or so she had thought. Jace blinked. Lyra, you never mentioned that your mom was alive." Lyra took a shaky step forward. "You? How?" Her mother's gaze softened. "There's much to explain." The room was silent, every rebel watching the reunion unfold. Then her mother's eyes darkened. "But first, you need to know the truth." Lyra's pulse quickened. "The truth." Her mother nodded. "About your creation. About why the Empire fears you, and about what's coming next." Jace frowned. "I hate when people say stuff like that. What's coming next?" Her mother's voice was low. "The end of the war, and the beginning of something far worse." Final moments. The resistance outpost pulsed with activity as Lyra processed what had just happened. She had found answers. She had found allies. But she had also found something far bigger than herself. The war between humans and the Celeran Empire was no longer just about survival. It was about something deeper, something older. And she was at the center of it all. Jace crossed his arms. So, just to recap, we're fugitives. We just fought off an army. You have superpowers. Your mom is alive. And now we're about to face something even worse than the Empire. Lyra took a deep breath. Yes. Jace exhaled. I seriously need a drink. Lyra smiled, for the first time in what felt like forever. For the first time, she wasn't running. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was fighting back. And this time, the galaxy was going to hear her roar.